Hello there, and welcome to Tales of the Force, a place for fans to tell their Star Wars stories. Joining me today is David. And a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was a boy who disdained space and sci-fi movies. He didn't care for the 80s action figures or starships. What he did love was Caravan of Courage, recorded on a nondescript VHS tape amongst other shows and movies. This boy is our guest today, David. After a journey through various fandoms, David finally fell in love with the Star Wars trilogy and fell harder for the books. During high school, he found others who were equally enthralled, and his connections to the Force has continued to the present day through the movies, shows, music, role-playing games, video games, comics, and everything that makes the fandom that is Star Wars. Don't forget, this is David's personal story. It is not my place on this show to dismiss, diminish, judge, or have an opinion on his story. Any views, thoughts, or opinions expressed are his own. Any comments on this episode and story are expected to be respectful. With all of that out of the way, please join me in welcoming David to Tales of the Force. Hey, David. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jessica. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk to you and learn more about your journey with Star Wars and all the things that you love about this fandom that we're a part of.
I'm looking forward to it. I love what you're doing for the community, the Star Wars fandom. So happy to get to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Now, you also have a podcast, and I'll have all that information in the show notes below. Would you like to tell everybody about your podcast and what you do?
What, you want me to self-promote something? Absolutely. Um, I host Tales from the Fandom podcast. It's a little bit over 8 years old now. Uh, I talk to different people about the stuff that they love. TV shows, movies, comics, cosplay, video games, role-playing games, and everything you can think of. And you can find it on if you're listening to Tales of the Force, you can find Tales from the Fandom on the same platforms and everything else.
Well, awesome. I love it. I know you have so many really cool, amazing people come on, and I love seeing all the pictures that you pick to post because they're always, especially when they're cosplayers, I feel like the most amazing, um, creative like ideas on different things, and I love it. So I yeah, you're doing so many good things too, just like, you're saying with this, and I love how you've brought so many different fandoms together and sharing people's loves of it at different levels of how they participate. They might just like it, or they might be a cosplayer, or they might be a content creator, or whatever. I love
As long as they say yes, I'm happy to have them. And they pick out the pictures, or they give me about 10, and then I narrow it down to I think what would look best. But
that's awesome.
they have great stories, and I'm glad to be able to feature them.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. What inspired you to start your podcast and telling the stories of everybody?
Well, my kids were young when it was 2016, and I couldn't go do the things that I used to like to do outside of the house because my wife worked nights and I needed to be home, monitoring them because they were little at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, "How can I make friends? I'll start a podcast. How hard could it be?" Famous
Famous
last
last words.
words, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So I started with people that I knew, and then I learned how to use Instagram because I had no clue, and it went downhill or uphill from there, and I've had some great friends made and great conversations, and here we are.
I love it. Yeah, I'm loving the aspect of making new friends and getting to see people in person at different things has been so fun. And it's just such a fun community and such a great way to meet new people, especially if they're not in your area. I find it's so fascinating how, I mean, yeah, there's negative sides to the internet, but one of the really cool things is being able to make friends and you kind of already have a little bit of a shared connection that you know about, so it makes it a little bit easier, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So with Star Wars, how did you get into that fandom?
It's such a ridiculous story because when and I say I'm old. I'm like 44. My parents used to record, random movies and TV shows on VHS tapes. So we'd have random tapes labeled with whatever was on it. Like from the 0 mark to 2 hour mark, it'd be one thing, and then it'd be a whole different thing for like another 2 hours. So one of the movies that I grew up with was Caravan of Courage, I believe. Yeah, Caravan of Courage, the Ewok Adventure was one of the first movies that I was like into and loved and had no clue it was Star Wars. Uh, when I was in elementary school, a neighborhood friend of mine had all these action figures and this big spaceship, and I was like, I don't like these toys. I don't like science fiction stuff. This is ridiculous. And I clearly remember throwing what was then the Millennium Falcon toy, which was a big spaceship toy. I remember throwing it on the floor at one point. Luckily, it's like a carpet and not like a hardwood or tile, so I didn't break the thing.
You didn't Harrison Ford it with the
No,
Legos?
no, but I was as a kid, I wasn't into science fiction or and anything space. I was not space. I was more like fantasy driven, or even like kind of like reality, like the books I would read were more like reality based. It wasn't until about middle school that I really got into Star Wars. I watched we had the original trilogy on videotape, um, which at that point it was the only trilogy. And I just got into it more. And as high school started, I found people that loved Star Wars as much as I did. And I remember being uh, purchasing the Timothy Zahn Thrawn trilogy with my own money. It was like some of the first books that I paid for that weren't
Yeah.
like a gift for me, and I fell hard into the books. I was a voracious Star Wars book reader. I would read anything and everything that came out. I would pick up like different comics. I remember senior year they re-released like the Star Wars movies into theaters, and then 2 years later was prequels, and it was all downhill from there. But yeah, I started off with Caravan of Courage and slowly made my way there. And Star Wars is the fandom that I love to talk about individually. I don't like to talk about it in a big setting, like especially the Bird app, which I
Yeah.
don't use anymore.
Yeah, same.
But I'm very pleasantly happy with threads and starting, and at least maybe not having giant conversations, but small conversations on
Yeah,
it. But I it's a more personal fandom, and it's one where there's a lot of negative energy sometimes, and
there
I
can
like to
be.
keep it on the positive side.
Yeah, yeah. It can be really hard because I always say this, like I think it is totally fine for people to have, I mean, opinions and criticisms and things like that, but I think how you phrase those and how you come across with that is what can be, I think, where we run into problems because if you're holding your opinion above someone else's and it becomes something where, it's demeaning to that person or you're acting like you have a fan card and they don't, that sort of thing, that can get that can get kind of hard. And yes, it's okay to be passionate about things, but you also want to be passionate about things and like kind and loving, I think, and
Mhm.
have some empathy. Just in life, just as like I don't know, this sounds kind of harsh, but like to be a decent human being, I feel like, and um it can be hard in this day and age when everything's on a screen, and it takes the humanity out of it a little bit. And I think it's easy to forget that you're talking to an actual living, breathing human being with feelings
Mhm.
on the other side, or the people that are making these projects or acting in them or whatever, writing them, are also living, breathing human beings with feelings that are trying their best. And so, yeah, keeping that in mind, I think is important, because it is a shame for people to be afraid to express about something that they enjoy and that they love, and be berated for liking something, or even not liking something if they're saying it in a nice way. It's
Yep.
it's a tricky thing, and then everyone has opinions on how to say that. And do you talk about the negative at all, or do you just talk about the positive? And to me, that's such a personal thing, and I don't think there's like really a morality, and it's good or bad if you talk about your criticisms or not. I think that's just like a personal choice. But I think where the issue comes is how you
Mhm.
talk about those things. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, with that, thank you for feeling free to talk about Star Wars on this, because it can be a hard thing. And I just want to reiterate again, I've said this with other people that have been on here. I am moderating my space that I'm creating. I don't regret that at all. That's a boundary that I am setting and I'm comfortable setting. I'm not allowing any toxic, negative comments on guest stories or on things in the space that I'm creating. There's no bullying, no mean girls, mean guys, like,
Yep, yep.
that kind of behavior. Um, it's not acceptable, and we know better as an adults, I think. And it's not teaching the next generation, I think, good things when we allow that to fester. That's,
Oh,
again, my opinion, and it's okay if other people have different ones, but this is a space I'm creating, and I want it to be a safe space. So,
absolutely. The power of the block button.
yeah. And I'll try to have conversations with some people, but if it gets to a point where there's just no point, then yeah, the
Mhm.
power of the block is a good one.
Yep.
So I know the Ewok movie, one of those, is kind of what got you into it. And I love that because, everyone assumes it's the first Star Wars movie. And I love hearing people coming in at different places, whether it's the Clone Wars or that. And I know there's someone out there that's going to say, I read this book and that's what got me into Star Wars. And I'm excited for that, because that's even less common than starting with a show or a movie. Do you remember what it was specifically when you watched the original trilogy for the first time that really captivated you?
Oh my gosh, that's taking me back. I'm old and I have brain memories where it's like, did I remember that, or am I taking someone else's memory? When I watched it, I think it was the benefit of having all three of them, number one, available, so I could just watch them back to back. Uh, I think for me, it was the same kind of, and again, when I was a kid at that point, so less than 10-ish. I'm thinking with that, because I was into Indiana Jones, so seeing the same or similar stories that we're getting from Indiana Jones,
Yeah.
same Harrison Ford, and
Yeah.
having the same adventure type stuff, and the details. And one of the things that I love is always like world building. World building is very important to me, and Star Wars allows you to really go wherever you want to go. It's a galaxy far, far away. You see all these different creatures. Like the cantina scene is a perfect example of what's that? Who's that? Why do they look like that? How are they existing? Where do they come from? And things like that get my brain going, and I absolutely love it. So things like that with Star Wars, that type of stuff, the action, the Death Star battle at the end, it's all really wonderful, and it just that's one of the things that just got me into the original trilogy and into Star Wars, was finally being able to just sit with it as a more developed, not kid, um, and just kind of enjoy it and get
Yeah.
into it.
Is there a favorite, like, creature, I guess, that you have from that cantina scene?
I always loved the Ithorian, and I
I
don't
love them
remember what.
too.
Yeah, I don't remember what they used to call them. The Hammerhead, I believe
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, I love the Ithorians. It's one of the things, again, with the books, because I love the books, of getting to go to their home world and learn more about them and their backstory and lore. So definitely the Ithorian from that. Return of the Jedi would be Nia Nub, who's a Sullustan. I love that guy. So it varies, but I love them all. Just give me everybody.
I love it. I love it. So I always ask people kind of like a fun random question. And if you could have a creature and you could build a story, like a show or a movie around like someone that you've seen on screen, you're like, I want to know more about this. Do you have anybody like off the top of your mind?
Well, absolutely, I do. I think there was something floating around a couple days ago where I pitched like four things of what I would love. Um, and let me just say, before I answer that, because I get to be a guest and ramble and answer all sorts of stuff, is that I love that we, with the Disney Plus Star Wars shows, we've been able to get away from just Jedi stories and have
Yeah. Yeah.
incredible other stories. And that's something that I've always wanted for the longest time, is give me different things. Like Mandalorian is like a Western story. Andor is a political, spy thriller type thing. Like, I love that we're getting away from that. I have a love for background characters, and there's a character in the original trilogy who I love, and he has books, about him and his group that are in the what is it, the Legends universe now.
Yeah.
That whole stuff got shunted over. But Wedge Antilles, who is
Yes.
who is the pilot from like he's like Red 3, I believe, or whatever in the first one, and then he's on the Snow Speeders, then he's the one of the people that blows up the Death Star in the end. I love Wedge. I don't have a rational reason for why I love Wedge. I just love Wedge. I would love to see a TV series, preferably like a really gritty series of starfighter pilots, and having them going from, mission to mission to mission of like, trying to cobble together their parts to keep them flying, and going into like these overwhelming odds with the Empire and all the things of doing that. Or after like Return of the Jedi, and setting it between that and like the establishment of the New Republic, and
Yeah.
clearing out like the Empire remnants, and again, just something along those lines. I have a feel like in my head it's like Battlestar Galactica style, like grittiness with their space battles and their pilots and what they represent there. I'd love to see a Rogue Squadron show, or just like random X-wing pilots or A-wing pilots or whatever, whoever, whatever ships they want to fly. I'm okay with it, but just give me that.
I'm surprised they don't have something like that. Like, I know that there was like a possible movie that we were going to get and all of that, but you know, pilot shows and movies are so popular that like the fact we haven't had one in the Star Wars universe is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, because people love that stuff. I mean, I think of Top Gun and all of that, and then I think there's even a new show on Hulu right now that's about, fighter pilots. And
Hmm.
it's just crazy that there isn't something like that in Star Wars. So,
Well, Let me. I will jump off because I know that a lot of people don't watch it or haven't watched it, and I'm gonna give my love to the person, Mandalorian Princess on
Oh,
Instagram and
oh,
Threads.
Resistance, yes.
Yes, I was going
I
or
know you're
Mandalorian Princess Resistance. That does focus on
it
like
does.
pilots. It's not what I'm looking for,
Right.
but it does focus on that. I want to make sure that she gets the respect
Yes.
because she that was her Star Wars that she started with, and for a long time
Yes.
people had said Star Wars Resistance it's not a Star Wars show. It's not what you're looking for. I watched it. I
I did
enjoyed it.
too. I did too. I liked it.
Yeah.
But
So
I'm also one of those people that likes pretty much all of it. So like,
exactly, like
that
I
discredits, I think, my opinion to a
no
lot
it
of
no it
people. But
doesn't. Well, okay, to the wrong people.
yeah, but no, I love her. I love her too. She's like my little Star Wars sister. I love her so much. I love all of her takes. They're so fun. And,
Yep.
as I was saying that, I was like, oh, I'm not trying to like shade Resistance because it is kind of about pilots and it is really good. But you're talking more like live action, like
Yeah.
grittier, like more Andor-ish kind of, but
Yep.
like,
Yep.
the fighter pilots. So
Yeah.
yeah, but no hate to Resistance. I love that show.
Absolutely. No hate.
It was fun. It was fun. And I kind of I miss the Star Wars animation stuff right now because I know we're about to get the Young Jedi. Is that what
Yeah,
it's
I
called?
think that's one of the shows that I have not watched.
Yeah, I haven't either.
But I've heard it's good, and I just need to make time for it. But I've got
Yeah,
other stuff that I'm
I
watching that are
know. There's so much.
that
There's so
there.
much.
I just need to keep a list so that way I can check mark it off instead of where it's like, okay, I have 10 new shows to watch. I will now watch a show that I've seen 20 times.
Yes, I do the same thing. I do the same thing. But yeah, oh, and it came to me. It's not Young Jedi. It's Young Jedi Adventures, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I miss the Bad Batch. I miss all of that. The Tales of the Empire was really good. I think they do so good with animation. I'm hoping that they'll do like something new. I always joke with when people ask like, would you make a show or would you do this? And I'm like, I want a Dex's Diner show. I don't care if it's animated, I don't care if it's live action, but it's just like him and like the random people that come to his diner and all the stories and all the different things. I don't know. I just think that would be so fun.
It would be. It I could almost see it where someone walks into the diner and Dex asks like, "Oh, well, what have you been up to?" Cue flashback, and that way we get different stories from different perspectives of
Yeah.
people frequenting it.
Yeah, it'd be fun. I don't know. I think it'd be really fun. Another fun question. So, one of the moderators, Victor at Fan Expo Chicago, asked this question, and I loved it. And I think you're the perfect person to ask this question to. If you could put the Force in any other franchise or series, what would you pick?
Okay, clarification on if I'm putting the Force in there, does that mean that I'm going to get like Jedi and Force users and Sith into that
I think it's just being able to use the Force.
to use the Force? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, let me.
I know. I thought it was a great question too. I was like, I have
Because
to ask somebody this question.
that is because you got to keep away from certain things. Like I'm not going to put into like X-Men or anything because there's mutants already. There's that type of stuff.
Well, it is hard, and I'll tell you the audience's favorite in that panel after you give me an idea.
Okay, yeah. That is an impressive question to throw me off with because I live in fantasy and sci-fi. You know what? It'd be just incredibly weird, and I would take it, which is I'm going to say Breaking Bad
Oh, that's a good one.
because that is like gritty reality, drug dealing, all that stuff. You put the Force in there, I don't even I don't even know what they would do, but it would be something to see.
It would. That would add like a whole new spin to it. I feel like that would be very entertaining. I mean, it's already entertaining, but like, yeah, that's a great answer. I like
Now,
that.
now I'm curious about the answer from the panel.
So a lot of people said a bunch of different things, but the one that made him laugh the most and the audience laugh the most was Bridgerton.
You know, I have no problem. I swear I just saw is Lord of the Rings related, but yeah, I would love to see some kind of show, like a Regency Star Wars show, like a very fancy on a planet that
Ooh.
that would I'd be down for that.
I mean, it could be very like Naboo politics, like,
Mm-hmm.
type show or Alderaan or something like that, where you've got, a royalty type situation and a whole court types, but like you could set it even back further so that's even like fancier,
Yep, yep.
like High Republic era or something. That would be interesting.
Now here's my question. Would the scandal be if the person was force sensitive? Like, would that be a scandal? Would you have to
Hmm.
try and hide that you're force sensitive to, because there's a lot of like drama that comes along with being a force sensitive person.
Yeah.
Uh, you
Yeah. I
know,
guess it depends on like in Star Wars if you wanted to join the Jedi or if you wanted to like hide it and not have to.
where's my fan fiction?
Hey, you're on to something. I love it. I
But
love it.
all right, people, Bridgerton Star Wars. I'm sure someone's already working on it as we
You
speak.
know that I
Let's
don't know. It's just everyone was like, "What? We can't believe somebody answered that." But it was like it was a good one. But I like the Breaking Bad too. That's it. That's a really good one. Do you have, speaking of force and using the force, is there any like force using characters that have really, I don't know, like stood out to you that have had like good wisdom for your life? I know you like Wedge, but like outside of that, um, that have has been helpful for you with your journey through Star Wars.
there was a conversation with the acolyte going around about Saul for a good time, about like Saul and Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, I find myself being really drawn to Qui-Gon's character. And I haven't read any of the books that involve Qui-Gon, and I'd love to take the time to be able to go read them. But whenever I see people write about his character and write about the books and the the emotions that they get and the stuff that his character relates to the Force and why he's such a great Jedi Master, it makes me feel connected to him in a different way. Like, I feel like Qui-Gon is a character that, as I get older, I feel more connected to. Like, when I was younger, 10, 20 years ago, it might have been Obi-Wan, or it might have been one of the Jedi Masters on the Council that you get to read a little bit about or see them in action. But I think as I get older, Qui-Gon is one of those where I gravitate more towards the way that he tries to handle stuff and the way that he reacts to things and his reflections on, being aware of everything that's around you and the living force. And it's something that I think more people, even, outside of Star Wars fans, like, just, be aware of your surroundings and be aware of like your effect in the world and something like that. But I'm not gonna ramble. I'm just gonna say Qui-Gon.
That's okay. You can ramble as much as you want. This is a very rambly podcast, I feel like. That's all right. Qui-Gon's great. He just has so many good like phrases and like words of wisdom, I feel like, throughout the different things. And the other Jedi that kind of reminds me of Qui-Gon is Kanan. Like I feel
Okay.
like Kanan is kind of very Qui-Gon to me. Like if Qui-Gon was put in the same timeline as Kanan, I feel like they would be kind of similar. Like a Jedi kind of
Yeah.
hiding, being a Jedi on the run versus, being during the time that there's the whole Jedi Council and that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. So, um, yeah, I love Qui-Gon too. And I think as I've gotten older, my appreciation for him has also grown. And it's interesting. It's interesting how we have like the characters that mean to us a lot as a kid, and they still mean a lot to us now, but then there's also the ones that we kind of can connect with a little bit more, and I think grow with in our adult life a little bit more too. So yeah, that's a great answer. I don't think anyone can ever go wrong with Qui-Gon. He's just solid. I feel like, but also flawed too, which I think is important. He wasn't perfect, and that kind of made him even a better Jedi, is because like he knew he wasn't perfect, and
Yep.
yet he still followed in the path that he felt like he needed to follow. So back to your kind of like your Star Wars journey. So you watch all of the originals, and then we get to the prequels, and we get Qui-Gon and all of that. How did that go? Through your life as those came out.
Well, let's see here. I was finishing up community college at the time and working at a thing called Blockbuster Video. For people
Yes.
that don't know what that is, it's where people used to go rent videotapes of movies and TV shows.
Be kind, rewind.
That's right. That's right. So in our small town in Florida, the one theater, because there was two theaters, one got Phantom Menace. They had announced that they were going to have the first showing at noon. So I got my foldy chair and got there about 3:00 in the morning, where there had already apparently had been a midnight showing, and they didn't really announce it. So people had already seen the movie once and were still out there waiting for the noon showing. So I hung out there, watched it, loved it. Pod race, awesome.
Yes.
Darth Maul, awesome. Lightsaber fights, like are you talking about like having grown up watching the original trilogy and seeing those lightsaber fights, and then you get 2-on-1 lightsaber fight? Like, that's really impressive. The graphics were great. It's a little bit too shiny for me on some of them. Reflecting back, having seen it over the summer when they did the re-release for the anniversary.
Yeah.
But I saw it 12 times in the movie theater, and that's not something I ever do. There's only one or two maybe other movies where I had seen it or had gone to see them multiple times, and that's after Phantom Menace. And I got to the point where if somebody hadn't seen the movie, I was like, "You're coming with me, and we're going to go watch it."
I love it.
And yeah, so Phantom Menace, and working at Blockbuster, we got some, Blockbuster specific toys, and the soundtrack was put out there. So unfortunately, some of the spoilers on the soundtrack, because soundtrack came out a couple weeks before the movie, and it's like, oh, there's a funeral. Okay, though that's a spoiler, but I still have most of my Phantom Menace stuff packed away. Most of it's unopened. And it's in the garage somewhere. And then by Attack of the Clones time, I was in college and had found my Star Wars people there. And then Revenge of the Sith came out, and I think the movie theater we went to they did a lead up to Revenge of the Sith where they had the first two. I believe they had the first two in the theater, so you could watch the first two, and then when midnight came, it was like, okay, and now Revenge of the Sith. So that was good times.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I remember as a kid being so excited because I grew up with the originals and being like, oh my gosh, there's going to be new Star Wars. And then it was like so intense, like you're talking about, the lightsaber battles. You're like, oh my gosh, this is everything that I wanted as a kid, and then you got a period of time where you're like, well, no more. We're not getting any more. It's done. And then we got more.
Who would have thunk after all those years we would have got more Star Wars? Like, we had all the books, like the books were coming out at a consistent every 3 to 6 months. There'd be a new book. There were comics, but that was what we had, and we had video games. So we had those three different things. Who knew we would get Star Wars? And that's as a fan now, where we're getting new shows every 6 months,
Yeah.
and we had movies where it was like, okay, not only are we getting the new trilogy, but we had Rogue One and we
Mhm.
had Solo, and then we have all these animated projects. I mean, the timeline that we're living in now of getting all this great Star Wars content, I would never have believed. Never in a million years would I have thought we're going to have this much Star Wars stuff.
Yeah. It's wild. I mean, there's so many people that, you know, were younger when the originals came out and maybe in their like 20s or whatever, and even they're blown away that it's become as big as it has.
Hmm.
Like it was big, but then it got bigger and now it's just massive to where it can be hard sometimes, I think, for people to follow the timeline and,
Yep.
where we are and different things. Each show that comes out, it's like, okay, wait a minute, but where is this set? And that sort of thing. So,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's nice.
helpful when you have a little like, okay, this is taking place between this, and it's like, all
Yes.
right, I gotcha.
Yes, yes. And then kind of refresh on all those things, It's I have yet, and this blows people's mind, but I have yet to do a chronological watch of Star Wars. I've never done it, but I
I
think
w-
I need to.
I will say I remember talking to a guest on my podcast, and that was one of the pandemic things that they did was they had the listing of not just the movies, but all the Clone Wars episodes
Mhm.
prior to I think that last season coming out. But they had all the Clone Wars episodes in chronological order so they could watch them, at the put slot them in where they needed to. And it's impressive.
Yeah.
I give kudos to people that can do that. I don't know if I could do that, but
I want
it's
to. I just haven't done it yet.
yeah.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day. I don't know. I don't know if it would be what the experience would be like because I feel like every time I rewatch it, I always rewatch it in like release order. I don't know why. I just do. But I would like to try like storyline chronological because I think that'd be kind of a fun experience, I think. What are some of the, I guess, like lessons or impactful parts of Star Wars that you have found for yourself?
I think that as I've grown and as Star Wars has grown with me, um, and as I've grown as a person, I look for I try to look for the best in what is put out there, and it's not just Star Wars. Like I'm talking more like you know, I I guess it is try to find the positive.
Mhm.
Um, Try not to dwell on the negative, um, because the energy that you're using dwelling in the negative can be used for at least something better, whether it's better for yourself, better for somebody else. Um, I guess that's the key thing for me is just try to look for the positive. Try, I guess, and I don't want to be like go to the light or what the that whole light force side of things because I find that there's you do need some of the stuff from the dark side not to be saying things like that, but you do need some of
No,
the
I get
bad
it.
stuff to balance out the good stuff. Like
Yeah.
a balance is great, but I think, just trying to be more positive minded, more open minded, more ready to listen instead of just thinking that, your way is the right way, taking everything and really just figuring out what works best for you. But yeah, just, trying to be on the side of positivity.
Yeah. I mean, goodness, it makes me think of Qui-Gon. Again, I think of how he is talking to Jar Jar, and Jar Jar is like, well, I speak. And he's like, well, that doesn't mean you're intelligent just because you can talk. And I think that has a lot to do with what you're saying, like what you put out there. Like we can all talk a lot of things and say a lot of things, but is it helping something? You know,
Is
is it just putting a bunch of negative energy out there? Is it being helpful to someone or moving something forward in a positive way? So that's a
exactly.
great thing to take
Yes.
from
Yes.
it. Oh, I love Jar Jar. I just do. I'm sorry. I know some people, he drives them nuts, but I do love him. And it could be from like seeing him first as a kid and just having that like sentimental aspect to the character. But
When we went to see the re-release in the theaters, and we brought the
yeah,
kids, and I say kids, they're teenagers,
yeah,
who I don't think they've ever seen Phantom Menace before. I've tried to get them into Star Wars. It's just not something that holds their attention, or they want to get into it. And I'll say, out of the three kids, one of them was a Jar Jar fan. One of them was like, "I love Jar Jar," and I was like, "That's really strange for you, like, to hear 25 years later of you love this character," and I'm still connecting to people
yeah,
today.
yeah. It is wild, but yeah, I don't know. That seeing that again in theaters was so fun. It was so nostalgic. It just brought me back to seeing it. It brought me back to playing like the pod racer game or
Yep.
the episode 1, like the Battle for Naboo game, like all of those things. I don't know. Yeah, and just seeing it in theaters, it was, I don't know, like it brought back so many childhood memories of different things and different experiences and all of our friends quoting the movie until our parents were tired of it. They're like, "Can you stop talking like Jar Jar, please? Like, please stop." Or people trying to recreate the fight scene between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Maul and different things like that. Or I would sit in front of the mirror and try to say Padme's lines, with a straight face and that
Mhm.
monotone voice as a little girl. So yeah, it was so fun. And the pod race scene, like you were talking about, it's still so good. Like you're still on the edge of your seat, even though you know what's gonna happen.
Yep. And it works in the movie theater so well because you feel like the engines. And I think that's the one thing, if you don't have like a whole surround sound set up at the house, you lose out on some of that stuff. But like you can feel the vibrations, the different like tones of the engines, and it's so wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It really is. I love a good surround sound because you're like, "Wait, what's going on?" Or when it tricks the dogs and they
Yep.
like if you have pets and they're like looking behind you like, "What was that?" You're like, "All right, the surround sound is good if it's like tricking even the animals into thinking something else is happening." Yeah, it's so fun. And the music, oh gosh, just that movie, the soundtrack is
Hmm.
just it's so good. I don't know why the Phantom Menace gets so much hate. I love that movie. Like, I don't know, the costumes, everything. I really enjoy it, clearly. Um but yeah, is there any other things like from Star Wars that really stand out to you for yourself personally?
I think, I mean, when we were talking about Phantom Menace, I wanted to give a shout out to the people who created battle droids and the direction that they took them in through the animated shows, because who knew like the comedy that we would get out of battle droids. Like it's
Yes.
it's one thing for like Attack of the Clones, where they switch like 3PO's head and everything. Like there's that, but kudos to the creators of Clone Wars and getting the battle droids to be that funny. Like that's incredible. And what dedication to the bit that they did.
Yes. Humor is
Um
so needed.
Beyond that, I mean, I just love that we're in this time period of getting such a wide variety of content from Star Wars, whether it is like the stuff on Disney Plus, whether it's the books that are coming out, whether it's the comics, which if you haven't read Dr. Aphra, you need to. If you haven't read some of the Vader stuff, you need to. If you haven't checked out the Padme trilogy, you need to. I mean, I've only read the first one, but it was an incredible read, and I know I'd like to read the others. There's so much that you can really get into and invest your time in and find enjoyment out of it. And
Yeah.
it's a lot. And as we're recording this, we have a new video game coming out in, I think, like a week, less than a week, 2 weeks, and exciting to see how that goes, and the continuation of Star Wars in the video game space. I just want more. I want everything. Tell me so many different kind of stories. Tell me, have a crew that goes and, does heists and Robin Hoods it up. Give me a story about like some rando Jedi, or like you said, like Dex's Diner. Give me any story that people want to tell. Just give it to me. And if they're not going to give it, go find the fanfic writers that do give it. And there's just so many wonderful people out there making Star Wars content, official and unofficial. I mean, just go support everybody, because you'll find the good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it takes time, and it takes, creativity is like a muscle, you have to work on it, and you have to, flex it. And nothing's ever going to be perfect. And you kind of have to let people figure out what works and what doesn't work, and let it have some time to kind of to breathe. Because I think, everyone, I think, can tell when something's rushed, and everyone's like, oh, that felt rushed, or whatever, and we wish it had more time. But then it's like, people also don't want to give things time. They want things now. And it's a weird back and forth battle that I'm sure, all the creatives have to struggle with when they're making a new project and different things, because you've got deadlines and you've got expectations and you have all these things, but you also want it to be right and good at the same time. So I can't imagine the stress that goes into making things, because of the aspect of, it's a company, so it wants to be profitable, and it wants to make money, and it wants to put things out at a certain time. And that can be hard in the creative process, because when you're creating something, you're not always thinking about that. That's not really the first thing that comes to mind when you're thinking of telling a story. You're not thinking, well, I need to tell this story and it needs to be done here, or, whatever. So it can be difficult. And besides those books, is there any other ones that you really like, that you would recommend for other people to read?
If you haven't read the Thrawn trilogy all the way back, and again, this is like 90s, they're worthwhile reads. And understand that the stuff that they're putting in with Thrawn and Rebels, and Thrawn and Ahsoka, and the future movie that they're having with like everyone getting together, or whatever it may be. Though that trilogy is a worthwhile trilogy. There's some stuff in there where it's like very dated. And of course it doesn't tie into any of the stuff now, because it's, again, Legends. Very worthwhile read. The Rogue Squadron X-Wing series books are incredibly well done. And even though, again, they're in Legends, I think the story still could hold up between, the end of Return of the Jedi and the bridging that, like filling in that gap, if you really love like Star Wars starfighter pilot type stories. But yeah, those books I'd recommend. The Dr. Aphra's incredible. Vader comic is great. I've heard that the High Republic books are good. I've not read them. Other people are reading them and say they're good, so I take their word for it until I get the chance to read it myself.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, there's so many options. And I don't know, I kind of look at the Legends and canon thing as kind of just like well, from a certain point of view, like it could be a story that happened, but it's just embellished a little bit, or maybe the name was forgotten and changed and different things like that. So I think even if it's not canon anymore, it's still fun to check those things out, because I don't think it takes away from anything.
Absolutely. And when we started off, you talked about like, oh, you maybe one day you'll find somebody who got into Star Wars through a book. I'm still waiting for the day of somebody getting into Star Wars thanks to having Star Wars cereal. I want someone to be like, I grew up eating Star Wars cereal, and that's how I got into Star Wars. I'd love to find that person.
Yeah, that would be interesting, because I'm sure like toys probably got some people into it.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much merchandise that, even like a puzzle or something, could be like, oh, that's interesting. What's this? Oh, Star
Yep.
Wars. Let's delve into that. But I never thought about the cereal, because there has been a lot of Star Wars cereal and things like that. Oh, did you get to eat the Star Wars Oreos or the blue milk?
I did eat the Star Wars Oreos. We went to Costco and found a box, and so they're individually wrapped. So that was interesting opening them up. I didn't have the blue milk that they sold in the grocery store, but we live in Orlando, and so we're lucky enough at one point to go to Disney Studios and go to Batu and try the blue milk there.
Yeah.
A little bit too sweet for me, but it's
Did you
good.
try the green milk?
I did not try the green milk.
See, I
I'm
liked
a
the green milk
traditional.
better.
I'm a traditionalist. I didn't know that there's
Yeah.
such a thing as green milk, so I didn't try it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was like a Last Jedi thing. And but I was looking at the flavors and the options, and somebody got blue milk and I got the green milk, and I
Hmm.
actually liked the green better, surprisingly, just the flavors. I don't know, but I did get to taste them, but I did not get to try the blue milk that was like at the grocery stores. Nobody around me
Yeah,
had it. So,
same. Yeah.
but the Oreos, I liked them. I liked the little Kyber crystal, like, I mean, it was just sugar that was like in all the other sugar that's in the Oreos, but I liked the texture of it for some reason. I don't know. It just gave it like a little like crunch almost to the
Yeah.
Oreo. I don't know. I really, really liked the Star Wars Oreos. So I ate too many of those by myself, I think.
Yes, the dangers of Oreos. You open it up and it's like, where'd that row of Oreos go? I don't know.
Yes. Like, someone ate it. I
That's
don't have
right.
very many excuses, because it's just me and my husband, and it's not like the dogs hopefully ate the Oreos. So it's probably me. I probably ate the sleeve of Oreos. There's a lot of cookies like that I'm like, how
Yeah.
did I already eat that many? Where did it go? Oh, I guess it's in my belly now. Oh, well, it's fine. We'll just start over the next day and probably eat the same amount again this
Exactly.
time.
Exactly.
Well, is there anything, I guess, as we wrap up, that you hope people would take away from listening to this episode about your story?
I think the biggest takeaway, and this is, I'm gonna say that, and I learned it through doing the podcast, and I learned it through people that I admire, is that it's so much better to use your energy to stay positive, to compliment, to put the good out there in the universe, than using your time and essentially wasting it on negative. And even the things that you maybe don't like, remember that you might not like it, but there's someone out there that damn sure does.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, you have to remember it's not just you not liking something. That's hundreds, maybe even more people that have worked and put their energy into that job, that show, that film,
Yeah.
that product. Um, that's people's work, that's people's lives. And if you don't like it, that's fine. If you want to critique it correctly, that's fine. But just just look for the good. Like, I used to be someone who was very like anti certain things in the Star Wars fandom. Um, and I grew and I learned, and I was like, you know what? It's better to find the stuff that I like and focus on that than complain and just be upset about the stuff that I don't like. And that's okay.
Yeah. What was the switch for you that made you decide to think of things a little differently?
Well, I'll say Kevin Smith and his heart attack. He did an interview afterwards where he was like, after the heart attack that almost killed him, he said, "Why wait?" Like his whole thing is, why waste time on talking trash about stuff when he could
Yeah.
just highlight all the good stuff that is going on, or the good stuff that's being made.
Yeah.
The other thing is, as a doing my podcast, there were times where I was like, I'm not going to talk about this fandom because I personally didn't like it.
Yeah.
And then I had a guest come on, and that one of those topics was one of the things that she loves. I was like, who am I to tell her that she can't talk about that? Like, that's something that she likes. I might not like it, but I shouldn't be poo-pooing on people's stuff that they like. So that was like one of those switches of, I may not like it, but that's okay. I don't have to like everything. If I liked everything, that'd be too much stuff for me. I need stuff that I don't like, so that way
Yes.
I can focus on the other things that I do like and put my energy into that. But there's people out there that like that stuff, and I'm okay with it. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I don't know. It teaches you something new. You're like, oh, I still might not like the thing, but I might have a new insight or a different like respect for whatever it is because I see that joy in someone else, even
Mm-hmm.
if I don't get it from that. Like it's nice to see that in other people. Yeah, that's a great reminder. I think all good things for people to remember because it is tiring and it's a lot to just like constantly either focusing on or being around people who are focusing on like the negative of things when, I'm one of those people that I'm like, if I don't like something or something about something and I can say it in a nice way, I'll say it maybe once and then that's it. I'm going to try to move on from it because there's no reason in just staying in that space and talking about that all over again when you can, like you were talking about, share about what you love and what you enjoy and what makes you happy because that's more enjoyable and it's better for us. It's better for the people around us, our environment, our bodies. Like it's just so much better, I think, to be
Yep.
to be that way. So, well, thank you, David, so much for coming on and sharing your story with Star Wars and us talking about all the other fun things along the way. I really enjoyed it. And like I said in the beginning, I will have all the information for your podcast and where people can follow you below and all the show notes. So thanks for coming on. It was a fun time.
It was my pleasure. I'm happy that you're in the space doing what you're doing. So thank you for doing, sharing people's stories and putting them out there.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I honestly love that you're doing the same thing just in a bigger capacity than than I can focus on. So props for you for being able to cover like all fandoms, any fandoms. I love it so much. And yeah, thank you. Thank you again. Thanks for joining me today on Tales of the Force. This podcast was hosted, produced, and created by me, Jessica McNair, with music by Michael Hoover. Don't forget, our stories of hope is the force of this fandom, and they are a powerful ally to each and every one of us. Life creates them, makes them grow. Their energy surrounds us and binds us together. Luminous beings we all are, and not this crude matter. May the Force be with you always.